3 points secured at home, a clean sheet on the board, and another step taken in what is shaping up to be a tense run toward the end of the season. Celtic walked away with a 2-0 victory over Falkirk at Celtic Park, and while it was not a performance dripping with spectacle from start to finish, it was one of those afternoons that quietly reminds you why consistency matters more than style when the pressure is on. This was a game played in the middle of transfer deadline day chaos, with attention split between what was happening on the pitch and what might still happen behind the scenes. Yet the players still did enough to get the job done. The opening stages had a slightly strange feel to them. Celtic started with control of the ball as expected, but Falkirk were not content to simply sit in and soak it up. For a spell in the first half, they actually looked comfortable moving the ball, pressing at the right moments and asking Celtic questions that perhaps were not anticipated. There was a 10 to 15-minute period where the visitors seemed to have more belief than many expected, and during that stretch, Celtic did not really test the goalkeeper in any meaningful way. It was not a bad performance, but it lacked sharpness in the final third and urgency around the box. The breakthrough, when it came, felt important, not just for the scoreline, but for the mood inside the stadium. The opening goal came from a moment of quality rather than sustained pressure, and it summed up what this Celtic side can do even when not firing on all cylinders. Kieran Tierney delivered a measured ball into a dangerous area, and the movement and anticipation from the striker were spot on. The header was expertly guided across goal, kissing the post on its way in, and suddenly the game had a different complexion. It was one of those finishes that looks simple but requires perfect timing, awareness, and confidence. Even with the lead, the match never really felt like a procession. Falkirk continued to show composure, particularly early in the second half, and there was a sense that if Celtic switched off, they could be punished. For a brief period after the restart, the visitors looked like the side more likely to score next, circulating possession well and pushing Celtic deeper than they would have liked. That phase made the second goal all the more decisive when it arrived. The move that led to the second goal was arguably the highlight of the afternoon. It was quick, fluid, and full of understanding between players who know each other's movements instinctively. Callum McGregor was at the heart of it, linking play, drawing defenders, and releasing the ball at exactly the right moment. The combination down the left side was sharp and purposeful, and when the chance fell, the finish was ruthless. It was the kind of goal that kills a game stone dead, not just because of the scoreline, but because of the message it sends to the opposition. McGregor's performance overall was one of quiet authority. This was a game that suited him far more than some of the more physical battles Celtic have faced recently. With space to operate and time on the ball, he dictated the tempo, recycled possession intelligently, and provided the platform for others to make things happen. It was a reminder of how influential he can be when Celtic are allowed to play their game rather than being dragged into a scrap. There were other individual performances worth noting, even if not all of them were flawless. The striker led the line with intelligence, often dropping into wider areas to link play and hold the ball up. While that meant much of his best work came outside the box, he did his job well, bringing others into the game and making himself a constant option. His goal will do wonders for his confidence, and the way he demanded service showed a striker who believes he belongs at this level. Out wide, however, there were moments of frustration with such a clear focal point in attack. Celtic, perhaps, did not make enough use of wide areas in the way supporters have become accustomed to over the years. There were fewer cutbacks from the byline and fewer moments where the winger isolated a defender and drove past him. Against a Falkirk defence that looked vulnerable at times, there was a sense that more could have been taken if the service had been sharper and more direct. Defensively, Celtic were rarely under serious threat. Falkirk had spells of possession and a few promising passages of play, but they didn't create many clear chances that truly tested the goalkeeper. The backline stayed relatively composed, dealt with crosses well, and ensured that any danger was quickly snuffed out. It was the kind of defensive display that does not grab headlines, but provides the foundation for victories like this one. The atmosphere inside Celtic Park, though, was a talking point in its own right. There was an odd flatness at times, even after the opening goal, and it felt noticeably quieter than you would expect for a home win. The absence of certain supporter groups was clearly felt, and there was an undercurrent of frustration directed beyond the pitch. Chants aimed at those running. The club echoed around the stadium, reflecting a fan base that, despite positive results, still has unresolved concerns about direction and decision-making. That tension between results and mood is interesting. On one hand, Celtic are picking up points, keeping pace in the league and staying firmly in the hunt. On the other, there is a feeling that everything is happening against a backdrop of uncertainty, particularly with the transfer window closing and speculation swirling about incomings and outgoings. Comments after the match hinted that medicals had been completed, suggesting movement behind the scenes, and that only added to the sense that this day was about more than just the 90 minutes. From a broader perspective, this victory does exactly what it needs to do. It keeps Celtic within touching distance, maintains momentum, and avoids the kind of slip that can prove costly at this stage of the campaign. Other results elsewhere went in Celtic's favour, tightening the picture at the top and reinforcing the idea that this season could swing back and forth right until the very end. In that context, a routine win, even one without fireworks, is something to be embraced. There is also the sense that this team still has layers to uncover. Certain partnerships are developing, new faces are beginning to settle, and the balance of the side continues to evolve. The quality in the goals showed what Celtic are capable of when combinations click, and if that can be sustained more consistently, the ceiling remains high. For now, though, it was about doing the basics well, taking chances when they came, and ensuring that Falkirk never truly believed they could get back into the match. As attention inevitably turns toward what happens next, both on the pitch and in the transfer market, this performance provides a steady base. It was not spectacular, it was not chaotic, and it was not controversial in footballing terms, but it was effective. Celtic moved on, collected the points, and kept the season moving in the right direction, all while leaving plenty still to discuss and unpack as the campaign continues to unfold. With the results secured, much of the discussion naturally shifted toward individual performances and what they might mean in the wider context of the season. One of the standout talking points was the strikers' display, not because it was flawless, but because it hinted at a profile Celtic have perhaps been missing. His movement inside the box was noticeable, constantly darting across defenders, checking runs, and then spinning away to create space. That kind of activity has not always been present this season, and even when the service was not perfect, his willingness to demand the ball and instruct teammates showed a level of authority that tends to come from confidence rather than reputation. The opening goal was a perfect example of that. He did not simply wait between the center backs, hoping the ball would land at his feet. Instead, he adjusted his position, attacked the space at exactly the right moment, and turned what was a decent delivery into a decisive action. The header itself was outstanding, guided into the far corner with precision, leaving the goalkeeper with no real chance. It was the sort of finish that strikers are judged on, and in that moment, he delivered. Beyond the goal, his link-up play was encouraging. There were moments when he dropped deeper or drifted wide, allowing midfield runners to move beyond him. That created a different dynamic to Celtic's attack, one that felt less predictable and less reliant on the same patterns being repeated over and over. While not every touch came off, the ball tended to stick when it reached him, and that alone relieved pressure and allowed the team to push higher up the pitch. The midfield battle was another fascinating aspect of the game. Callum McGregor's influence has already been noted, but alongside him, there was a broader sense that Celtic were trying to vary their approach more than in recent weeks. Instead of forcing everything through short passes in congested areas, there was a willingness to mix things up, occasionally looking for runners early or switching play to stretch Falkirk horizontally. That variation made Celtic less predictable and at times more difficult to press. One player who continues to divide opinion is the goal-scoring midfielder who added the second. His contribution is undeniable when it comes to output. 15 goals from midfield at this stage of the season is an exceptional return by any standard, especially considering he has not started every match. He has developed a habit of popping up at crucial moments, often when Celtic need a goal to settle nerves or swing momentum back in their favor. That knack alone makes him hard to leave out of the starting 11. At the same time, questions remain about what he offers outside of those moments. His overall involvement in the game can feel limited, particularly when Celtic are under pressure or need energy in the middle of the park. Compared to other midfielders who cover ground relentlessly, win tackles, and drive the team forward with intensity, his style is more selective. Yet, football has always had room for players like this, ones who may drift in and out, but ultimately decide matches with goals. The challenge for the manager is finding the right balance around him. Defensively, there was a quiet solidity that will please the coaching staff. Falkirk may have enjoyed spells of possession, but clear chances were few and far between. Celtic dealt well with crosses, tracked runners diligently, and avoided the kind of lapses that have cost them in other matches this season. It was not a heroic defensive display, but it was disciplined, organized, and effective, which is often exactly what is required in these types of fixtures. Out wide, there were signs of both promise and frustration. The energy and work rate were evident, with players willing to track back and support the fullbacks, but in attacking terms, the final product did not always match the intent. There were opportunities to drive to the byline, to pull the ball back into dangerous areas, and to really exploit the physical presence of the striker, yet too often those moments fizzled out. It left the feeling that Celtic could have scored more had those decisions been sharper. The crowd's reaction throughout the match added another layer to the narrative. There was appreciation for the goals and the result, but it was tempered by an underlying restlessness. Banners, chants, and the general tone suggested a fan base that is not entirely satisfied, even when the team is winning. That disconnect between performance results and atmosphere is unusual for Celtic Park, a ground typically known for its intensity and unity, and it speaks to broader issues that extend beyond this single match. Transfer deadline day only amplified that sense of uncertainty. With reports of medicals being completed and speculation swirling about arrivals and departures, it felt as though everyone was waiting for news that could shape the remainder of the season. The idea that several players could still come in or that others might leave hung over the match like a question mark. While the focus on the pitch was clear enough for 90 minutes, the bigger picture was never far from anyone's mind. In terms of the league table, the win was significant without being decisive. It keeps Celtic firmly in the conversation, maintaining pressure on those around them and ensuring that any slip by rivals can be capitalized on. Other results elsewhere tightened the margins even further, reinforcing the sense that this season may well go down to the wire. In that context, dropping points at home against a side like Falkirk would have been damaging, which makes the professional nature of the victory all the more important. Before we proceed, subscribe to our channel and enable notifications to receive all exclusive news about Celtic FC. Don't miss any details about your favorite team. It's extremely important for Celtic FC fans. There was a sharp edge to the air around Celtic after their European night against Utrecht, and it had little to do with celebration. Word doing the rounds is that Martin O'Neill let rip behind closed doors, furious at a defense he felt turned the tie into a circus act. The side may have done enough on the night to move on, but the manner of it has set tongues wagging across the support and beyond. According to sources close to the dressing room, the manager's mood was black as coal. Conceding twice, in his view, was no badge of bravery, but a symptom of carelessness, poor communication, and a lack of basic discipline. O'Neill is said to have told the players they played like children, a line that has already grown legs around Lennox Town. It's being whispered that he was less concerned with the opposition's quality and more with Celtic's own naivety, switching off at the worst moments and inviting trouble for the sake of it. Speculation is rife that this outburst is about more than one night. Some reckon it's a warning shot to senior figures at the back, a reminder that reputation counts for nothing if concentration goes missing. Others suggest it could be the start of a rethink before Europe asks harder questions, with places suddenly less secure than they looked a fortnight ago. There's even quiet chat that O'Neill might dip into the market should the same flaws keep showing their face. For the fans, it's a familiar mix of pride and worry. There's belief in the manager's standards, but there's also a nagging sense that European margins are thin and mistakes get punished quick. If this really was a defensive circo, as some have dubbed it, then the coming weeks will tell whether O'Neill's blast lights a fire or leave scars. Either way, Celtic's European story feels far from settled. Hello, fan. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, as it means a lot to Celtic FC. Also, share your opinion about the news in the comments below. See you in the next video.